We want to take a moment to recognize June's episode sponsor, who we are so grateful for, Heartland Chiropractic. Located in Monticello, Georgia, Dr. Lindsay and her staff have been restoring health naturally for 10 years. At Heartland Chiropractic, it's not just about chiropractic care, it's about building better lives. Their team truly listens, treats every patient like family, and serves with purpose and compassion. We're proud to partner with a business that shares our commitment to impact, service, and community. Call them today for a free consultation, 706-468-6500. Vertigo, neck pain, whiplash, they can help come up with a personalized plan for you. That's 706-468-6500. Thank you, Heartland Chiropractic, for supporting the Impact Show this June.
Welcome back to Impact Podcast. My name is Jeremy Melton, and I'm your host. And we do not have a co-host this week. Maddie made plans, and so she won't be with us. But we do have some guests. This is episode number 21, and we are glad to be here. I was thinking about that on the way up here. Episode number 21. That's not a lot for a lot of people, but from where this thing started, it's a lot.
Yeah, man.
To think about. So I've got some really, really, really special guests today, and I can't wait to introduce them. I'm going to go ahead and do that. So Mack and Ria are here. Mack and Ria Story are here, and they are also students of leadership and teachers of it. And so I'm so glad to have them today. There'll be a lot of video footage and pictures flying around, so you guys can see who I'm talking about. But we are in the studio today on Sunday. It's a beautiful day outside. Yes. And I am so excited to be here, really. Maddie is going to be upset that she wasn't here, and Daniel's not here either, but Kenny is. We have Kenny in the house. He is got lights up and cameras on, and so we're happy to be here. So
Making us look better. I ain't going to say good for me. Maybe for you two, he's making you two look good. He's making me just look better.
Better. That's right.
I'm hard to work with.
There you go. No, I appreciate your humility, Mac, but me too, buddy. The lights help me too. Okay, so without any further ado, we're just going to get started. We're gonna spend this. We're going to do this episode a little bit different. I normally structure these episodes a hard structure, and we ask questions and all that, but we're going to take today, at least for this episode, and we're just going to kind of talk and get to know each other. I haven't done a whole lot of that on Impact Podcast, but today that's what we're going to start with. And so having said that, without any further ado, Mac, if you'll start, tell us who you are and what you do, and we'll go from there.
All right, I'm Mack Story, and these days I focus on helping people live a better life at home and at work. And got my brand is Blue Collar Leadership brand. The name of our business is actually Top Story Leadership, but everybody knows us from Blue Collar Leadership. My background's manufacturing, and I highly value the blue collar folks. So that's what I'm doing today. Ria and we speak and teach on leadership all over the country. Sometimes being as 40 states in a single year, in Canada and Mexico, Guatemala sometimes, but we mainly focus on the U.S.
Nice. That's interesting. So you do and so for our audience, for my audience anyways, it's probably a lot smaller than yours, but they don't know you, right? And that what you just said was that you go around and travel and teach blue collar people, and you go all over the United States and some outside the United States. That's pretty cool.
This is pretty cool when you come from where I come from. It's unexpected.
Yeah. So, and I'll tell you, I'll say this because it's important. In 2020, I think that's what we talked about a while ago, Mac came to one of my previous companies that I used to work for and did a leadership teaching during COVID. And we, the company that I was with was always investing in their people, which is, by the way, I'm a product of that, right? But they always invested in their people, and they were good about that. Teaching and training and leadership development was important to them, and that's the culture that they had. And so, but you came and taught there, and I heard a little bit about you there. And then I remember looking you up, Mack, later and finding your YouTube channel and your podcast, and was blown away by your integrity and some of the things that you teach. And so it aligned with the way that I teach. And I thought, man, I need to listen. So I spent, I don't know, several weeks listening to your stuff and getting to know you without meeting you. Yeah. So that was really cool.
The podcast you were listening to.
Yeah, I was listening to the podcast, and you and Ria were talking, and I listened to that for a while on the way to work. I recall, as a matter of fact, sitting in it's weird how you remember this stuff. Sitting in the Chick-fil-A drive-thru, listening to your podcast, and you were teaching about, I can't remember the exact subject, but it was really good stuff. Okay, that's all I remember. And because there's a lot of different things that I listen to, but this particular day I was at Chick-fil-A, sitting in the drive-thru, and I was going to see a customer, and I was thinking, man, I'd like to meet that guy. Now, that was, 2 years ago probably. And so, anyway, Greg Crumpton, we've got a mutual friend, Greg Crumpton. He was on a few weeks ago on the show. But he and I were talking one day, and he had made mention of you as well, and I think you spoke on his podcast.
Yeah.
Anyway, here you are. But I tell you the one really cool thing, and then I'm gonna let you have the floor again. One of the coolest things I thought of when you were, when I'm watching your stuff and I'm looking at your stuff and looking at your followers and your excitement and your passion for blue collar people, I was listening to it one day, and you said, "Here's my phone number. You ever want me, call me." And I thought, man, that guy's brave. I mean, this stuff's flying all over the world, and I wonder if it's really true. And so I put his number in my phone, and I texted you, and you responded. And I was like, well, heck, this guy's for real. And here he sits. So that's really cool, man. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, that's cool. And probably nobody wants my phone number yet. Maybe after we speak, they might want it. But just in case, I'm going to go ahead and give it right here. 334-728-4143. And I tell people, anybody, sometimes we speak in the audience, there's several thousand people in the audience. And I do put it on my podcast and on social media. I put it everywhere. And somebody asked me one time, why you give your number out to everybody? I'm like, I want people to call me so I can help them. And we don't really get bombarded. I don't get bombarded. That many people want to be helped, I guess. So I don't know. But I get plenty. Sometimes I spoke to one guy from midnight till 5 a.m. till he had to go to work.
Yeah.
And he reached out on LinkedIn. I'm a night owl, so I don't go to sleep too early. And he sent me a message or something on LinkedIn, and it was about midnight. I texted him back. He wanted to talk. I said, I'm available right now if you are. And he got, I gave him my number right there, and he reached out, and we got to talking, and he was in sponge mode, just soaking it up. What's cool about that guy is he started kind of his own leadership development, speaking business and all that. He was in construction at the time up in Philadelphia, I think, or Pittsburgh, somewhere up that way, and just poured into him.
Man, like I said, you're doing that to me now, and I appreciate it. It meant a lot for you to respond and for you to talk to me and to be here. So anyway, I'll get off the subject, but I want you to know that that's really powerful. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that was just a few weeks ago. I had never heard of you before then. Yeah. You'd heard of me, but I hadn't heard of you.
Right. Yeah, I've been following you for years.
Yeah, I appreciate it. That's cool, and you're gonna have people telling you that, in the future.
Maybe so if I'm lucky. But yes, so
yeah, that's outstanding.
Cool. Ria, what about you?
Well, I always say that Mack and I have his mind and ours because we often speak and teach together, right? The leadership concepts and principles that we teach are relevant for just about everybody. But his niche is a little more of the blue-collar space, and I tend to focus a little more on the leadership principles with a focus on teaching those to women. And I like to say that the principles that I like to teach are to help that leader develop the team that they want to lead and help them become the leader the team wants to follow. Mm. And there again, whether we're speaking to a youth group or at a high school, we have done some groups with high schools and things like that, or whether we're talking to a blue-collar leadership conference, or we spoke once at a yarn convention in downtown Atlanta. I'm pretty sure I brought the only male there. But the same leadership principles apply, right? The stories change, the stories that we share. But we enjoy speaking together. I mean, we got married because we like each other. So why not do life together? But let me tell you, when you live, work, and travel with the same person 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you do have to more than like love them. You do have to like them because we spend a lot of time together.
Wow. That's impactful. That story. Look, I mean, it's funny you say that. You're right. How many people work together all the time? You really have to be able to get along with that person.
Yeah, you gotta like them. Love ain't enough.
Love ain't enough.
If you're gonna be 24/7, 365 with somebody, you better like them.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. And so have y'all been doing it together all along, or did she just bolt on at some point?
Well, when we started, Mack wanted to train and teach, and I wanted to be the speaker. In fact, as recently as 2015, I was speaking at conferences, and he would very supportive, but he would sit in the back. He's like, I don't want to be a speaker. I wanted to be a leadership trainer. Mm-hmm. And so he would come along, but he didn't want to be the speaker, quote unquote.
Right.
And so at some point, I was like, it's really not any different. You're still teaching or talking, whether we call it speaking or training. It's not much different.
Right.
You get to talk. And so I'm like, just get on stage with me. And then he had so much to say, he wouldn't let me get a word in edgewise. And so I was like, buddy, if I can't talk with you, you're going to have to find your own gigs, because the way it works is if we're going to share the stage, we get to share some microphone time too, right? So we had to figure that out.
Good. But you did.
We did.
We did. No, it's working. It's working good. So tell me, besides, we'll get into some of the mic time and the studio time. And I mean, y'all are really cool people, and you travel the world and you teach leadership, which I love. What about your story, Mack? Like, how did you become, and you start back at your childhood or whatever, but how did you create an ambition to what she just said, which was to train and teach? Why? Where did that come from? That was born somewhere.
Yeah, the spark happened in 2005. 2005, I was working in a manufacturing company, and I need to tell your audience a couple of things. First thing is, they probably already figured it out, but I'm bilingual. This is the first thing I say when we speak anywhere. I let everybody know I'm bilingual. And a lot of people think that I speak English and Spanish, but that's not it. It's English and country. and everybody laughs when I say that. And I had a high-paid mentor tell me one time, don't say that, it ain't going to work. I say it everywhere because I know it'll work. If you speak country like I do, it'll work. It worked. We got to speak at Yale University in 2018 about blue-collar leadership, and that was, I told them the same thing. And I had on a suit and tie that day. I told them, I like to be authentic, so I told them, hey, I wore my Halloween costume for you guys. I'm dressed as a white-collar executive today, but this ain't who I am.
It's a disguise.
I had to represent them. But the other thing is, I started out, neither one of my parents graduated high school. I was an idiot. Most of my early adulthood and teenage years, I was like just stupid all over the place. And I tell people, me and my friend, we used to get to school early. School starts at 8. We show up at 7:30, and people think that's pretty good until you realize why we were there. We were there to drink vodka and orange juice before class. I mean, that's who I was in high school. Barely graduated. But again, when your parents haven't graduated, if you actually graduate, no matter if you barely graduate or not, you've actually accomplished something. So, and I did that, and then I went and joined. I was in Marine Corps Reserve infantry unit, straight out of high school. Then my bunkmate in infantry school after Paris Island, my best friend knew him, but I didn't know him. And then through infantry school, because we bunked together, got to know each other really good. And when we got out of all of our training and went back to the real world, and we were just doing our reserve, weekend stuff with the Marines, he said, hey, he went to work at a manufacturing company. I said, you think your dad get me on down there? It was no dream of being a manufacturer. It was no reason other than my bunkmate's dad was in manufacturing, and he got me a job down there in 1988. And first 10 years of my career, I was an entry-level factory worker, doing mills, drills, CNC mills and drills and lathes and gear shapers, and 7 days a week, 12, 14, 16 hours a day. My longest stretch was over 12 hours a day for 3 months straight, 7 days. And, that was on a night shift. So I just want to tell people that's where I come from. Hot, dirty, nasty work. I loved it, though. And then eventually I started working my way up, and I got into CNC programming and engineering type jobs without an engineering degree or anything, and got into cost estimation engineering, got my bachelor's degree in business only because the company paid for it. And then I think they gave us like $10,000 when you graduate as a gift. So all of us, we had the most educated workforce.
Wow.
You know, of a lot of places. We didn't do nothing with it, most of us, and but we went and got it. So tell you all that to say, in 2005, I was over a process improvement for our manufacturing plant of about 200 people. We had about 70 plants around the world, about a $2 billion company. And you ever heard of lean manufacturing, lean construction, anything?
5S.
Yeah, that's a piece of it.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's what our CEO of this $2 billion company. We had been around since 1915. He gave the command basically from the top. We're going lean, and first thing we got to do is implement 5S. So,
wow.
So they found somebody, or each plant was expected to find somebody to implement it. I raised my hand. I always liked improving processes, improving things, and hadn't had any formal training or anything in lean. So I set up 96 team meetings. I forget how many it was, but it was 96 over like an 8-week period or something like that. And so anyway, started leading that in 2005. That's the position I was in. We had started making some progress. A quality technician, and at that time I was reporting to the plant manager. So I was upper level staff manager for the top guy, one of his 7 or 8, leaders. And so during that time, I'm out on the shop floor. A quality technician, entry level guy, comes by. He said, "Hey man, let me take your iPod, put some music on there for you." I said, "All right, Zach." A little while later, a few days later, I see him out by the quality lab. He handed it to me. He said, "Hey man, got you a lot of cool music put on there." And he said, "I put a business book on there for you." I said, "Oh yeah, what's that?" He said, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I said, is it any good? He said, "I don't know, I ain't never listened to it." and he said, "But my friend's dad, who had the music on his computer, had this book on there, and he talks about this book all the time." And so he just thought enough of me to download that 1-hour audio highlight of the 7 Habits. It wasn't the whole book. It was just a highlight, but I didn't even know it. Fast forward 3 years, I'm a slow learner, Jeremy. I ain't listened to it yet. It's 3 years, we had tremendous success with implementing all of lean. We went from minus 3% gross profit margin to plus 35% in 3 years.
Wow.
We added 50 positions in our plant and didn't have to hire a single person because we have eliminated that much waste out of the existing processes. Brought in 3 new departments, still didn't add any new employees. Headcount actually went down about 10%. Not because we were terminating people when we improved, but people just leave under normal circumstances or can't work, won't show up for work. Stuff's nothing to do with improvement. So anyway, fast forward to 2008, I resigned after all that success with lean to start my own lean manufacturing consulting company. I'm driving around North Alabama. At that time, I had a pretty cool Corvette Z06 with long tube header, sounded like a NASCAR. So I'm cruising around up North Alabama to talk to a client, and had my music going, had my iPod plugged in my stereo, and had a nice stereo system in there. It was jamming, and windows down. It was in the fall. Song went off. All of a sudden, a guy starts talking. Just, no music or nothing. A guy starts talking. I'm like, there is a God.
Was it John Maxwell?
No, it was Scovey. It was that audio book.
Oh, I got you.
That's the first time I listened to it by accident.
The 7 Habits. Okay.
Highly effective
I got you.
people.
So that was on the iPod, and that just started playing. I understood.
Yeah, I had forgot about it. But as soon as it's, I was like, what is that? Asking myself. I looked at the screen. It said 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And it was just like instant.
Wow.
Flashback to Zach being back there telling me, he put that book on. It was a business book. And I'm thinking, I'm driving around trying to get business. I don't have any business. Maybe I ought to listen to it. So I let it play. And Jeremy, literally, I tell this all the time when we're speaking. It's the most important principle I ever learned in my entire life. I learned it off of that audio within probably, I ain't listened to that one in a while, but probably within the first 5-10 minutes.
Uh-huh.
And because it was only an hour, and it was 7 Habits, and he was giving you the highlights. And what he said at that time was, between stimulus and response, human beings have the freedom to pause and choose their response. Mm. And when I talk about being an idiot, one of the ways I was an idiot is I had a short temper.
I don't know that you really described that effectively.
I need to paint him a picture.
Yep.
Imagine a chihuahua on acid with a machine gun. And he's mad.
Okay.
going crazy. You know, I'm a little guy, and I used to be crazy and was in the infantry. So anyway, I was rough, and so that's who I was when I heard that.
Now they're wondering why I married you.
That's what I was about to say. Ria,
Well, I was better. Ria met me. I was 30. I was even 30. I was still pretty rough.
yeah.
You know, I didn't hear this. The story I'm telling you now, I was like 39.
Mm-hmm.
So I had accidentally learned a little bit in life, but
Yeah.
not like when I became intentional.
Yeah, I got you. Do y'all have kids?
We have a son from my previous marriage.
Okay.
I had a lot of things I didn't do right. Marriage was one of them.
I got you. Well, we'll get back to that. We'll let you finish your story first.
So anyway, I hit pause on that player and thought about that and rewound it, listened to it 5 or 6 times because up until that moment, I ain't thought about that.
So the principle that you just said was, say it again.
Between stimulus and response, human beings have the freedom to pause and choose their response. Basically what he's saying, something happens, we respond.
Yeah,
In between, we can pause and choose that response. Up until then, I had like no gap
I
between
got you.
the two.
So you just reacted.
Oh, yeah.
Instead, now, then you learned that you needed to respond
Yeah.
rather than react.
Yeah, I learned about it. I didn't learn it till I figured out how to do it.
Okay.
Right? I just learned about it in that moment.
Understood.
But I had never heard it, and it was profound.
Yeah.
And I literally rewind 6, 7 times trying to process that.
Yeah. Well, that's what. So I'm just sitting here thinking, you're sharing that with my audience and whomever's listening, and they're probably thinking the same thing. What'd you say? Say it again. So, and you said you hit rewind, so we won't make them hit rewind. We'll say it again. So, how you respond is up to you.
Yep. And what he's teaching habit 1 of the 7 habits: be proactive versus being reactive. And that lesson in there is proactive people respond based on values that they've established
Wow.
and want to align themselves with, and reactive people respond based on emotions and feelings. And that's the life I had been living.
Huh.
You know, how somebody was making me feel, but I didn't realize I control how I feel. You ain't got nothing to do with how I feel. You
That's
cannot
right.
offend me. There's nobody on this planet that can offend me unless I want to be offended. I can't offend anybody, but that ain't the story the world gets told out there.
There's a lot of power in what you just said. You cannot offend me.
Not
That is
without my
really-
permission.
Well, it's really good because many, many, many people don't understand that, and they just take offense. And if they don't realize that they're responsible for how that comes across, and that's interesting that you mention it.
Yeah,
Well, Go ahead.
when we're on stage speaking, I tell people when I'm teaching this, I teach it more in depth. I'm trying to accelerate because I got to tell you, how I got here, and then Ria's got a phenomenal story.
I love it.
But when I'm speaking on stage, I tell people, at that time in my life, I said it and I believed it, and my family said it. We would have said, if you'd ask any of us, we'd tell you short temper runs in our family. And we provide the evidence to support the belief. Just hang around us long enough, anywhere, even at the family reunion. It got ugly at the family reunion, everywhere. And so what I learned in that moment, because what he says is when we're able to pause and choose our response, that means we're response able. It means we're able to choose our response. So when we stop and choose our response, I could picture him in my mind, putting his hands together saying we're response able. Response able means we're responsible. And I had to hit pause and think about that. And when I realized that, then I realized short temper don't run in my family. Irresponsibility runs in my family. And that's a big deal. Having that mindset shift that I'm responsible for who I am. I can't say, as soon as I truly understood that, I had to stop saying somebody made me so mad. I couldn't say you made me so mad, or somebody in traffic made me so mad, or my kid or my wife or anybody else in life. If I'm mad, that's because I choose to be mad. It took a lot of learning to figure that out. Like, I didn't figure it out that day. From that day forward, I always thought about it. Like, I probably got mad 10 more times that day, but every time I thought about it, I didn't have to. And it's like a muscle, right? You got to train it. You got to develop it. Today, I don't really get outwardly angry. I might get real quiet, and it may last a couple of days, but I'm on the pause button. Instead of doing something stupid, at least I can pause and not do something stupid. The better thing would be to do something positive, but sometimes I can't.
Yeah.
But as soon as I stopped doing the negative, my life started getting better.
Wow. It's that is profound. Your whole outlook, and I'm sitting here, I'm processing because I knew that you had taught on some of this, but it's always reminding because, look, if you don't stay after it, you forget. But all the things that you're saying is profound. People, that's not normal. The way you think is not normal.
Not today. It's not.
Your mindset is so different than other people, than the normal person. But that's the mindset that's necessary to be successful.
Yep. So a fast forward to how I got here to what I'm doing today was, eventually I got a client. Then I was booked solid for 4 years straight from 08 to 2012. The very first team, and I was leading teams from 05 in my own plant until 2012, the last 4 years, as a consultant in somebody else's plant, multiple plants in different states. I logged 11,000 hours leading cross-functional teams through process improvement during that time. And most of it was in those last 4 years as a consultant, because I was doing it every week over and over. When I was in my own plant, I'd do an event for a week, and then I may not do another one for 2 or 3 weeks or a month. But anyway, when I started, the very first event that I was leading, brought these six to eight people together. I said, hey, I need y'all to do something for me. And they were cool. They didn't know me. But I said, it's going to seem crazy, but I got this 1 hour audio. I need y'all to listen to it and let me know if I need to share this with everybody or if it's just something I'm crazy about and none of y'all care. So I put that 1 hour audio in. They agreed to it. I hit play. We sat there around a laptop with the 2 little speakers plugged into it, kind of boring looking situation, and in a rough old dirty office room in the middle of a manufacturing plant, and listened to it. We got done. I said, what you guys think? They said, it was everybody. It was unanimous. Everybody wanted to talk about it, what they just heard, what they thought about it. And they said, you need to play this every time. Everybody needs to hear this. He said, everybody in our plant needs to hear it. Every team needs to hear it. And that's the short answer to how I got here, because I kept playing it every week. I would play that. But what happened was I had to start pausing it and telling something that I learned from that and how I applied it into my life.
Okay.
Like eventually, when I hit play in 2008, my son, that I love him to death, and he's just
34.
Yeah, just turned 34, and he had hated me. He was 17. He had hated me since he was 15.
Wow.
And he kept hating me till he was 19. But when he was 17 is when I discovered the stuff I'm telling you about right here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one reason I'm so passionate about it. I know you can change your life. You can make different choices. You can apply these principles. Your life's going to get different. And I didn't do all this to rebuild that relationship with him. It wasn't even on my mind. It wasn't even a thought or an idea. I said, this stuff makes sense. I need to start doing it. And my mom started noticing I'm getting different, being different. She wanted to know what I'm doing. I started telling her. She was so interested that I was changing so much drastically that she started reading the books that I was reading. So then she was telling Eric, my son, hey, your dad's changing. You need to give him another chance. You need to give him another chance. But she could articulate it because she was reading. So she's loaning me her influence. And 2 years of me into my growth. And let me just say, today it's been 17 years. I've been reading every day since I hit play on that audio, this type of content. That's a lot of reading. But not all day, every day, just a little bit every day. Some days it's a whole book. Some days it's a paragraph. And so that's how I got here. But I got so many stories about how it's changed my life personally. I mean, how it's impacted. Because I met Ria in 2000. I didn't hear this stuff till 2008. So there was a lot of growth happen, during those 8 years too.
She helped with that. She was the teacher then.
Yeah, that story is powerful in itself. So I'll let you get her to telling some of your story. But it just resonated with me, and it resonated with the people. And I realized people want to hear it. And after 4 years of me sharing it, and I'm reading every day and sharing more stuff with those people, they got bought in so much that the leaders of that company wanted me to stop doing the process improvement events. I had grown and developed and trained up coordinators there that they could do them on their own. And they started putting 20 people a week in a full week class with me. 25% was teaching them about process improvement. 75% was playing the 7 Habits. They bought 7 Habits books for everybody. Covey never knows I sold a lot of books for him. They bought audios, they bought videos, and I'd play it along with other stuff, and basically I'd pause and I'd interpret. I wasn't teaching Covey stuff. He was teaching it. They was listening to him talk.
Yeah.
But I was interpreting, what's that mean to me? What's that mean to us in our world? And after 4 years of that, I decided that's what I want to do is that. And I took like 1,200 people, about 20 people at a time, 1,200, 20 per week. So that's where I got, if you want to call it, polished at speaking. But I was still growing and developing myself every day and sharing stories every day.
So is a lot of your teaching, I mean, if if Covey's teaching was that life changing for you, I'm assuming you I want to say stole his stuff, but you probably put some of that stuff in your teaching.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I tell everybody, by the way, anything that I say is regurgitated from what I've read, right?
There are no new principles.
No, there's nothing new under the sun. Okay, so all this stuff is just you learn it and then you teach it, and sometimes you can throw a spin on it, and like you said, you make it so everybody can understand it in that industry.
Yeah. And people, you know, if you're a person of faith, which I know you are,
Yes, sir.
all these principles come from the Bible and from God. They ain't but one source when you talk about it.
That's
from
right.
that frame of reference. But I always tell people that, you know, if you're a person of faith, that they come from the Bible. If you're not a person of faith, they still come from the Bible.
Yeah, I love it.
But it doesn't mean you have to be a person of faith to get results out of it. I was agnostic when I discovered this stuff. For 4 years, I was agnostic. I said I didn't think there was a God. I don't know if there'll ever be a God or was, or if I'll believe it. I don't know. You know, I didn't know. But me aligning with these biblical principles, and I knew Stephen Covey was a person of faith. John Maxwell's another big person that impacted my life. And I knew where it was coming from, but I didn't care. All I knew was it worked.
Yeah.
And I know there was no pressure for me to become a Christian at any point. Nobody ever put any pressure. But I just started aligning with these principles, living, you know, doing the works in the language of the Bible, and my life just started getting better. And the very first live training I went to was with John Maxwell in 2012, and it was a 3-day conference, and one of the days was on Sunday, and he said, you know, there were people from all around the world, all different religions, no religions, when you're talking about me. And he said, hey, Sunday morning I'm going to do a service before we get started. All of you are welcome to come. And I just like hearing John speak. I didn't care if he was talking about Jesus and God. It didn't make any difference. And he's still teaching the same principles, just put a different story around them. Mm-hmm. So I went in there and did that. And at the end, he asked everybody to bow their head for a prayer. And I always did out of respect. And I did. And then he said, if you're not a person of faith, you know, if you look up at me, I want to talk to you specifically. And my integrity had grown enough then that I didn't want to do that. It's one of them things when nobody's looking right what you do, because nobody knew except me.
Yeah.
And so I raised my head up, and so did other people. And he talked about accepting Christ and that sort of thing. And he said, if you want to, raise your hand, repeat after me. And I never expected it. My arm went straight up, and I did the repeating. And when I got done, he gave me a signed copy of his leadership Bible. And a couple years later, I read a Bible cover to cover, a student version, and got baptized. And
wow.
And but Ria's about to share some of her story. And even after I did all of that, when Ria actually just chose to share her story that she's probably going to share with you here in a second, the moment she got on stage and shared the story that she's probably going to share a bit of here in a second, that's when it was like a bank vault clicked.
Really?
Because it was, my favorite quote from Les Brown is, coincidence is God's way of staying anonymous. And it was my quote even before, my favorite quote from him before I was a Christian or a believer. It made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of coincidences on how we met, why we maybe met, and just so many coincidences that it couldn't have been coincidence.
Right.
And so that's when I really, even though I had raised my hand, accepted Christ, and started down the journey, it wasn't until she shared her story, and I didn't even know she was going to share it. I was hoping she was, but we were going through separate.
I just want to add to touch on that. I think your passion for the blue-collar leadership really sort of right in that year, 2013, 2014, was when you realized all of these principles that you were learning were out there. There were books on these leadership principles and concepts, but they weren't shared in a way, or they didn't have the stories or the frame of reference that the blue-collar people that you worked with for so many years and you're one of, you didn't see anything for that group of people. Like a lot of white-collar executives go to trainings and go to these conferences, and they're learning these materials. But your passion realized that no one had ever invested in you. No one had ever taught you as a blue-collar worker these leadership concepts that changed your life.
Yeah, that's where my passion stems from, what she just said, because during those 20 years of working for multi-billion-dollar companies, no company ever invested one penny or 1 minute introducing me to any of this type stuff. No leader ever said you need to read a book or listen to a podcast. Zero. And so when I discovered it, I'm like, it's just me or is it everybody? Then I started figuring out in the blue collar space, it's nearly everybody. Sometimes even the owners or top leaders in the company hasn't been through any of this type stuff. So I created the blue collar leadership brand because I wanted the blue collar folks to know this is for you. Got their name on it.
Yeah.
blue collar.
Yeah.
And
No, and that's attractive to the blue collar folks for sure. Because they we're humans and we all like to relate. And when we can relate to that blue collar, as crazy as it is, they're drawn to understand what it is.
And the greatest leader that ever walked the face of the earth, in my opinion, is a blue-collar leader, you know, a carpenter. So when you think about blue-collar leadership, you won't find scripture and all in my books,
Right.
except for one of them where I talk about my personal transformation, 10 Foundational Elements of Intentional Transformation. It's the name of that book. And in there I share my journey of faith. But there's a lot more stuff than that in there. But that's the only book I really share my faith, because I think my calling, I think God wants me to do for people what Covey and Maxwell did for me, but I'll be doing it in a different way, because they were doing it speaking about faith a lot. But I think my calling is for me to do exactly what happened to me, is to put these principles out there in a way that people want to grab hold of them, that they want to live them. You know, somebody like John or you as a pastor, somebody who's a pastor, somebody else can put them in the headlock and get them on the team. I think my calling is to get them to start living in alignment with these principles so they can have a better life.
100%.
And that's what I do. You know, when I first started talking about this, though, I had people in manufacturing plants. The first break, somebody would come up and say, "Hey, man, you a preacher?" No. And, you know, back then I wasn't a Christian. I wasn't a non-believer, agnostic. And I was like, "No, man." He said, "Well, you sure are speaking the scripture up there."
That's right.
He knew it, even though it wasn't saying it. Like when people read my books, they see people who really know the scripture. They see the scripture from beginning to end, but it doesn't say that.
Yep.
But that's what it is.
Interesting. That is so interesting that you can really preach to people without preaching to people. It's not necessary. And oftentimes, my pastor said it this morning, that, you know, the laymen or the kids or the students have a better chance at witnessing to the common people than he does. And so, anyway, that's kind of what it reminds me of. So, Mac, that's pretty good.
So there's that Ria over there. She's the main attraction.
Okay.
I'm the
Now you're just trying to stay
I'm the
married.
sideshow. Or I say she's a superstar. I'm the backup singer.
So, Ria, tell us your story. Tell us all about how all this came about for you.
Well, my story is a lot different than Mac. I was fortunate to work with some great organizations in my career, my formal career, that did talk about leadership, and they sent me to courses and they sent me to classes, but it was all in the context of management. They just didn't know what to call it, right? A lot of times there's confusion about the terms management, leadership, and they were teaching management and calling it leadership. And for me, that was a big part of my journey, because I was good at the management, but I didn't have the natural influence and leadership, and I didn't know there was a whole language around how to influence people. And today we say that the same leadership principles that we teach help you influence your teenagers to make better choices in life, just as much as they're going to help you influence your team members. And who doesn't want to help your kids have a better life, right? And the reason I think that was so impactful for me is because, I left home at 19. I left behind a father who sexually abused me and trafficked me, and a mother who blamed me for it. And I didn't have anything when I left home. I didn't have any money. I had a duffel bag and a pillowcase stuffed with clothes. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a high school diploma. I'd never been to school. But when I was, growing up, we were very isolated. We didn't go to church. We didn't go to school. We weren't in society. And so it was years later after leaving before I realized how bad my situation was. But there were some really dark times during those years. And, I won't go into a lot of details, but there were times when life was almost not worth living. And I thought about it, a tub of warm water and a razor blade. And when I was 19, I met this knight in a shiny Camaro.
I don't know about the night part, but back those days I had a pretty cool supercharged Z28.
It finally really gave me, I'd run away before, and my father would always find me and bring me back, and I'd run away and he would bring me back. But when I met Mac, he was the first person who really gave me the courage to leave and stay gone, right? And of Of course, I didn't have a high school diploma, and I didn't have a GED because I'd been homeschooled. And so I looked around, and the only job I could find was working as a waitress at Pizza Hut. And I speak to a lot of youth groups and teenagers today, and I'm like, how much money do you think I was making? Back before they were born at this point, you know. And they're all like $10 an hour, $12 an hour. I'm like $2.13 an hour.
As a waitress. With tips.
Yeah,
With tips.
Yep.
She's talking about 2000. Ria and I met in the year 2000.
Yep.
And, you know, $2.13 an hour to pick up half-eaten pizza crust off the floor and bus dirty tables. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, right? We all start somewhere. But I knew two things. Number one, that's not what I wanted to do the rest of my life. And number two, the job of my dreams wasn't going to come find me at Pizza Hut. And I couldn't have said it in so many words back then, but I realized I had a choice, right? I could let what happened to me define the rest of my life. Or I could say, you know what happens to us impacts us, it influences us, but it doesn't define us. And again, I couldn't have put it in such language back then, but I knew I could play the victim, or I could say, let's just lock it up in the closet. And that's what I did. I locked it in the closet and threw away the key. I didn't want to talk about it beyond a few family members or close friends. Nobody knew. I didn't want people to know.
Right.
I didn't want people to see me as a victim. I didn't want people to know what I'd been through.
Right.
And that's not really healing, right? It's surviving. It's coping. But it was what I needed to do at the time to just move forward. The greatest limiting belief in life is what I call the victim mindset, blaming someone or something else for our circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't control other people. We cannot control much of what happens in life. But as Mack was talking about, we always have the ability to control how we respond.
Right.
We don't get to choose the hand that we're dealt in life, but we choose how to play those cards, right? And so, you know, I had to go get a GED, and I had to go to community college, and I started working my way up, and I did. Considering where we both came from and our respective journeys, I think we were very successful. And I worked my way up to a high-level position in a hospital, and again, great organizations along the way that poured into me and helped me grow. And, you know, all along that way, I never did talk about my story. I didn't want to share it. And so in 2013, we went down for a leadership conference Mack was talking about, John Maxwell's conference. And I heard Les Brown speak. He's a motivational speaker. And he's speaking to this whole room full of people, right? 200 people in there. And he says to this whole room full of people, you have a story to share, and someone needs to hear your story. You can help that person. And if you don't share your story, they will never be helped. And I thought, I don't want to share it. I don't want to share it. You can't make me. I worked really hard to leave this behind. And it took me 6 months from that date to even think about it, because it just had so much power over me, so much shame and false sense of guilt and fear, right? And so we go down for a speaker training. Mack signs us up on the spot when we heard Les Brown speak that day.
Well, I was hoping what she's telling you is happening was going.
Thank you, Heartland Chiropractic, for supporting the Impact Show this June. At Heartland Chiropractic, it's not just about chiropractic care, it's about building better lives. Their team truly listens, treats every patient like family, and serves with purpose and compassion. We're proud to partner with a business that shares our commitment to impact, service, and community. Call them today for a free consultation, 706-468-6500.
Happen. I didn't know it because I would never tell her to do this. I didn't try to leverage anything. I was just trying to facilitate the opportunity for it to happen.
Right.
So we go back 6 months later for the speaker training. And part of the speaker training was everybody got to create a 60-second speech. Because Les Brown says the best speakers make the fewest words go the farthest. So I'd been this was heavy on my heart and thinking about it. I didn't tell even Mack that I was thinking about it because I wasn't sure that I could do it.
And we sat at different tables to meet different people for networking.
They make you sit apart.
So I didn't know what she was up to.
So the morning of this conference comes in, and part of it was a contest. Like the winners were going to be invited to speak with Les Brown at a future date.
Wow.
And so I'd been thinking about it and just praying about it. And the morning of the conference came and the contest, and I mean, I had a meltdown, like ugly mascara running meltdown. And I'm like, God, I don't think I can do this. And if you're a person of faith, that's when I felt the reassurance that you can do it, but you don't have to do it alone.
Right.
Well, you can't walk on water until you step out of the boat. And that was my boat moment. And so I, fix the mascara and go back into the conference room. And it didn't matter if I won the contest at that point. It was about overcoming me, right? Overcoming that fear and that shame. And when I sat down, that was the win. But I did win the contest, as it turns out. I was one of the 5 winners.
Wow.
That were invited to speak with Les Brown a few months later.
Out of
Really?
about 300. Yeah, you got invited to Los Angeles. That was a cool experience.
That is very neat.
And then 10 days after sharing my story publicly for the first time, I went and resigned that job I'd gone to college 10 years to get. Because I discovered the difference between a career and a calling.
Wow.
And I couldn't chase a calling and a career.
No.
And Mack was, again, on a similar path of shifting from lean consulting to leadership development. And, he used to say, I am so passionate about this. I'm going to go live. I would go live under a bridge to do this. And I'm like, I'm not living under the bridge. We have to figure it out before the bridge.
Yeah.
Like, that's not an option.
We got close.
But there were some ramen noodle years.
Yeah.
Of figuring that out. We had successful careers. We cashed in our 401ks and we sold all of the car and the pool and the hot tub and the Hummer and the Corvette and we downsized to a little apartment and made some incredible lifestyle changes because we'd realized the difference between success and significance.
What year was this?
This was 2013. We started making those big changes. 2014 is when we really got serious and said, okay, sell the house, sell everything.
Wow.
Because we were struggling financially.
Yeah.
I mean, when we started giving up, and when I sold my Corvette, that was the first thing that went. And, we still was making, in today's dollars, maybe about $600,000 in today's dollars. But between 2012 and 2013, we both give up all of our income, which to today's dollars or yesterday's dollars, either way was zero.
Yeah.
We went to zero, she gave up her job second, and then that went with all the health care and all the benefits. And
I thought you just put on your LinkedIn profile speaker and people would hire you to speak, and it didn't work like that.
No. That's so cool, though, that y'all had the faith to do that, right? And so most people don't do it because of that, the sacrifice.
That's exactly right.
Yep.
And fortunately, we were on the same page we were both willing to sacrifice,
Wow.
right? That was a huge blessing for us, is that we were on the same page, we were on the same team. We were both like, you know what? Yeah, the material things didn't matter.
Right.
So, and it took several years. And when I wrote my first book, sharing my story, I thought, okay, I'm done. I can go on to this leadership, speaking and coaching and training. Like, I'm ready to check that box and move on. And I really didn't realize it wasn't just about sharing the story, but sharing the lessons and the leadership principles of leading self that I needed to share with people, right? It's not, we all go through adversity in life. It's common to humans. But it's what do we do with it, right? And how we respond to it. And that's where I realized it was, for me, that was the essence of leadership for self. Because nobody can influence other people until we first learn, to control ourselves and then build the character that helps us build that influence. And so it took me several years to really figure out what was the blend, what was the balance, what was, who is my audience that I'm sharing this message to. And even today, whether we're speaking at a leadership conference or a small group or a business, training, I usually do share at least a little bit about my story. And every single time someone in the audience needed to hear it.
Yeah.
And
Well, people connect that way.
yeah.
we've seen state troopers with tears in their eyes when we're speaking to law enforcement. We saw some prison wardens out in California. We were speaking to, a guy come up and he was in tears. I mean, this people have hard times. Everybody has different ways. Never know who.
Yeah, and I think there again, for all of us, realizing that we blame other people because it's easy. But the moment we're blaming someone or something else for our circumstances is the moment we give away our ability to improve it, to change it, right? It's easy to blame him. It's easy to say, he made me so mad, or I can't do XYZ because of someone or something else. But that's the greatest limiting belief as a human, as a leader, because so many times as leaders we say, well, if my team would just get more and become more engaged, then I could be more effective as a leader. Well, if you're the leader, the team is exactly where you're leading them.
That's right. Look in the mirror.
Look in the mirror. And it's hard. But there again, it's so true in life, it's so true in leadership that how Elrod said, the moment we take responsibility for everything is the moment I can change anything. And so much of the time, we have the ability to make what we want happen if we would start making the choices that would take us that direction.
Yeah. Wow. That's super encouraging too. So y'all both studied leadership at the same time. You committed to going out and doing this together in 2013 and 2014.
Yep. 2008 is when we both started actually reading leadership and studying it. We kind of did it separately at the same time, kind of not knowing it.
It's so crazy how you talked about a calling earlier, and it's so crazy to me that God put y'all together on the calling. You both were called about the same time, and you went with it, and you're still doing it today. So that would have been 11
together?
years. Yeah.
So about 12 or 13.
Teaching and traveling. And
yeah, 2013 is when we started together.
I got you.
2008 for me, I was consulting and teaching and speaking this type of stuff, but more in the process. I just made it part of my process improvement initiative. If you know about lean, the two pillars are respect for people and continuous improvement. But most people who do lean, they just focus on continuous improvement. What I teach about is personal growth and leadership development is true respect for the people. Growing and developing everybody at every level, 360 degrees. Everybody's a leader. Leadership is influence, that kind of mindset. And so, but that's what I was doing. I was doing that in my consulting business.
And then you did you close that consulting business and start Blue Collar Leadership?
Yeah, 2012, cold turkey. that was, 2008 when I started that business. I gave up, a 20-year career, my income, and then went to zero. And then I quadrupled my income pretty quick as a consultant.
Yeah.
And 4 years later, I gave up that quadrupled income, went to zero.
It's so crazy how that story aligns with somewhat similar to my story. Like we talked about earlier, I've just recently decided to do that, give up my career for my calling. And of course, here we are talking about this stuff. But I just think it's cool that y'all had this calling at the same time and threw it all in, went out on faith, and did it.
Yeah, we were broker than we had ever been for 5 years, from 2012 to 2017. But at that same time, we were happier than we'd ever been.
Right.
I mean, it still are. It ain't never stopped.
Right.
And it ain't ever been we tell people all the time we're not trying to make a lot of money. We're trying to make a lot of difference. That's why if we were the kind of people that's trying to make a lot of money, we wouldn't be over here with you on a Sunday afternoon. We'd drive, 4-hour round trip to invest this time. But we want to help you. We want you to be successful. Our world needs people like you to be successful. And I don't know if this will help you, but I'm enjoying the conversation with you, no matter if this ever even went out anywhere.
I think it'll help me a lot, and I hope it helps y'all. But significance, I think you said that earlier, in having an impact, and that's what we want. And so being in the room with y'all today is impactful for me. And so you're definitely making a difference, and you're being significant in everything that you do. I love your stories, both of you. And that's what this episode was about. And so we're actually going to do another episode for the interview. We're gonna, because now that we know you, we know each other, and I know your stories. I want to know some of your teaching.
Sure.
And so we'll come back for another episode, and that'll be episode number 22. Again, thank y'all for sharing, and let's go ahead. Oh, you know what I didn't do earlier, which it doesn't matter now. But we need to think about a takeaway. So let me think about a takeaway, and then we'll get together next week. So thank y'all for coming. Really and truly, thank y'all for coming.
Absolutely.
Right.
It's always a privilege.
It's a pleasure. I tell everybody out there, make an impact.
Yes, make an impact. Thank y'all.